Welcome again, Faster Canada. We're here with Justin Taylor from Auxiliary CrossFit. They have an interesting story in terms of moving from space to space to space, and I want to talk to you, Justin, a bit more about the strategy that you guys had. So tell me about that strategy of growing within the small spaces you had.
So Andrew and myself wanted to maintain a really clean, organic business model where we only grow as we need to, and if we need to, in theory, we should be able to afford to. That means we don't need bank loans, we don't need bank rolls, we don't need any sort of lien on our mortgage, we don't need anything other than cash flow at the present time.
It sounds like you started a little bit like the strategy of most CrossFit people, a few years back, they started in their garage and then kind of move on to a bigger space and a bigger space. So I imagine you started, that smaller space allowed you to have very little overhead, small rent. I imagine you broke even within the first 10, 12, 15 members there. So there's something unique about your strategies that you're always within the same building, right?
Yeah, so a huge advantage to this is, if we could have started in a garage, we would have. Garages in Toronto are usually used as apartments, so there aren't garages. What we took was a space that we knew we could afford, regardless of we get 1 member or 10 members. Our break-even point was around 8. We knew in a small space that was manageable.
Hi, my name is Andrea Miklovic. We're here at Auxiliary CrossFit in Toronto. So I just want to tell you a little bit about how we got started. So we started in this space right here, about 400 square feet. Pretty small to start off with. We started in October 2011. Equipment-wise, we had to get a custom-sized rig to fit in this space. I would say we could fit about 3 people side by side doing lifts in here. A lot of times we had people warming out in the hallway and then cycling into the space to do their workout, and then cycling back out into the hallway to do their cool down. So we start off in the space. We were here for about 3 months. And then in January of 2012, we had the opportunity to knock down the wall into the space next to us. So then we expanded into about 750 square feet, doubling the space that we had available. Worked out really well for our needs, the building that we were in. Our members didn't have to find a new location to go to. It was already still familiar to them. So we could fill in about 12 people per class. Worked really well for the time being, but of course we got to that point again where the space was filling up and we had people out in the hallways again. So we had the opportunity to knock down a wall and move into the space next to us, and then for the next few years keep knocking down the walls and moving into larger and larger spaces. But we had the opportunity to move into a much larger space in the same building. So we went up, took a look at the space, about 5,500 square feet, little larger than we needed. We weren't planning on moving into such a large space, but just the timing was right. We got such a great deal on it, and it just worked well with the size that we were growing. So here we are in the new space of Auxiliary CrossFit.
So you went smaller to huge. So it sounds like you kind of maybe stepped away from your strategy a little bit. What convinced you guys to take this much bigger space versus kind of continuing that micro organic kind of growth?
So we could have just as easily knocked down a wall in our neighboring unit, added another 40% to our space. But we can also identify that with Reebok's advertising, with the growth in Toronto, the popularity we've seen and the attention people are putting on CrossFit, particularly in Toronto, that it would be advantageous to have a large space that we can showcase and grow into over the next few years. So we decided to stray a little from our plan, but again followed our rules of never going above and beyond what we can afford, for sure, no risk involved at all, and jumped on the opportunity to quadruple our space instantly.
So Justin, it sounds like you guys really capitalized on the first. This is almost within the same year. Almost you moved all these three spaces. You're very fortunate that this building allowed you to do that, and that the landlord allowed you to do that. I don't think very many CrossFit affiliates out there have the opportunity to kind of just jump around from space without any penalties, without having to worry about breaking a lease or subletting. So congratulations for that. It sounds like you guys are. You took the last final kind of major risk to get in here, but again, you did that all without overhead. And I think that's a really interesting model that if you're thinking about opening a gym, you could look into that. Try to find a building that has potentials to grow or move within the space versus a smaller space that you're kind of committed to for the next 2-3 years. So I wish you guys best of luck. This is a huge space, so I'm sure you guys will fill it fairly quickly. So thanks for talking to us today.
Thanks.